Good morning. Today, as we look at polynomials, we'll be answering the question, what is a polynomial? Also, what are some ways to describe it? First of all, polynomial is a sum. Now you might see sum means adding. You might see subtracting because subtracting is the same as adding the opposite. So it's the sum of some terms in the form ax squared plus bx plus c. In other words, we have a term and it could be multiplied by some value out in front. Of course, if you don't see a number out in front, it's the number 1. So I guess there is a multiplier out in front, right? And then we could be adding to that other terms. Notice that the exponents on these three terms are different. This is ax squared, or this is x squared with some multiplier. This is x, that's an exponent of 1 times something. And then this is something times x to the 0 power, which really don't need to write down because x to the 0 power is just 1, which would then just make it be whatever the multiplier or this value is right there. So that's why we don't actually write x to the 0 there. Constant is a term that has no variable attached to it, which is why it's silly that I even wrote x to the 0. The degree, or a degree, is the exponent of the variable in each term. And standard form then has the terms in descending degree order. So you're going to see the highest degree or exponent first, and then it descends from there. So let's try to write this polynomial. See these three different terms being added together. Let's try to write that in standard form. So find the highest degree. Standard form means the highest degree goes first. This right here has the highest degree or exponent. So x to the third goes first, then looks for the next highest degree. The next highest degree is x to the second power. Notice it's a negative 5 in front of it. So I'm going to subtract 5x squared. And last but not least, this 7 does not even have a variable attached to it, or you could think of it as x to the 0 power, but let's not write that down. Sure enough, the degrees go 3, 2, and 0. That's in descending order. So variables have degrees. This variable has a degree of 3, this variable has a degree of 2, and this variable has a degree of 0, or it's a constant. Polynomials also have degrees, and that's just where you find the largest degree or the largest exponent degree-wise, and that's going to also be the degree of the polynomial. So what is the degree of the polynomial in example 1? Well, if we look at example 1 and we look at the standard form, since we put it in standard form, it's really easy to see the highest degree, because the highest degree, when it's in standard form, is the exponent on the first variable. So the degree of the polynomial is 3. Again, if we didn't have it in standard form, then we'd have to look around. We have an exponent of 2, we have an exponent of 3, and an exponent of 0. So that is the highest degree right there, degree of 3. We had to search for it a little bit more. The leading coefficient, the coefficient of the first term in standard form. So it's the value out in front of the highest degree. Not the variable, but the coefficient, the multiplier out in front. So what is the leading coefficient of the polynomial in example 1? Well, here's the highest degree and the variable it's attached to. Out in front is the coefficient or the multiplier. I don't actually see a number. So what number is there? 1. We don't actually need to write that down in standard form, but we need to know that there is a 1 there. So 1 is the leading coefficient. There we are. Here we had to add a little bit to our table. So you can copy down what I have right here. Please do that. You can pause it. So we have an example, we have a degree. Go ahead and write those numbers down, and we have a degree classification. Please write that down now. Okay, welcome back. Thanks for writing that down. If you didn't, seriously pause it. Go back and rewrite that down. So, there's a couple ways to describe polynomials once we have them all written out, besides the little parts of it. We can describe it by the number of terms that there are. So the number of things that are being added or subtracted. If there's only one term, it's a monomial. If there's 2 things being added together, and here's an example of a monomial, by the way. If there's 2 things being added or subtracted, there's 1 term, there's 2 terms, we call it a binomial. Like a bicycle has 2 wheels, this has 2 terms. And the last description we'll use is if there's 3 things being added together, trinomial. Like a triangle has 3 sides, this has 3 terms that are being added together. But wait a minute, I see a minus sign there. Well, remember, you could, if that bothers you, you can add the opposite. You can add a -4. 1 term, 2 terms, 3 terms. We'd call it a trinomial. So that's another way to describe polynomials. We've already talked a little bit about degrees. So this example right here, its highest degree is 1 because the exponent on the x, or the degree of this x, is 1. It's an invisible 1. The degree of this polynomial, or the highest exponent we see here, is 2. And down here in this trinomial, because it has 3 terms, the degree of it is 3 because the highest exponent that I see in it is a 3. When it's a degree 3, we call it a cubic. When it's a degree 2, we call it a quadratic. And we've seen a lot of, in first semester, we've seen a lot of equations with just x's and constants. So like if it's 3x, that's a linear function. It makes a straight line. These last two, the quadratic and cubic, do not make a straight line when we graph it. We'll look more at quadratics here in a couple of weeks in terms of graphing. Last but not least, write the polynomial in standard form. So remember, standard form means find the highest degree first. So I see this thing, that's the highest degree, negative 5x to the 4th. Then I see an x to the 3rd, that's right there, that's a positive. So plus 2x to the 3rd. See any x squareds? Yeah, right there, it's a negative 3x squared. See any x's? Yep, right there, so minus x. See any constants or plain old numbers? Yep, right there, minus 7. So there's the polynomial in standard form. How many terms are there? So how many things are being added or subtracted here? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. What's the leading coefficient? So that's the multiplier in front of the variable with the highest degree. So here's the variable with the highest degree. There's the multiplier out in front. The leading coefficient is -5. What is the degree of the polynomial? So what's the highest exponent you see? Boom, right there, it's 4. Last but not least, what is the constant? Go back up, remember a constant in your notes is the term that does not have a variable attached to it. So this -7 does not have a variable attached to it. That is the constant.